All right, welcome everybody. We're excited to have you with us today to talk about the Illuminating Engineering Society. We have a couple of awesome guests with us today to share their insights and information. And before we do that, I want to turn the time over to Aubrey Larson to help introduce what we're going to be doing today and get to know you a little bit better.
Thanks, Jake. And please, in the chat, mention if you can't hear me. I have consistent mic issues. So again, welcome. This is the fourth installment of our Western Night Skies Council seminar series. And as Jake mentioned, we're excited to have members of the Illuminating Engineering Society with us today. Again, my name is Aubrey Larson. I work for the State of Utah's Community Development Office, where we create resources in support of rural communities' planning goals. And I'm also coordinator for the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative, which we'll talk more about in just a moment. I'm excited to have both Alex Baker and Eric Yamashiro with us from IES. They'll introduce themselves more in depth in just a moment. And then Jake Powell and Lasoja from the NAR Initiative. And all of you, thanks for joining us this morning. So if you're new to the Western Night Skies Council, never heard of it, it is a 40+ member council. We have various stakeholders from all over the West, anywhere from federal, state agencies, public land managers, educational institutions, tribal groups. We've got so many different people with a variety of goals, and the common denominator is dark skies. And what I love is everyone has slightly different interests, different concerns, different opportunities they're chasing, but we all come together under this dark sky umbrella. The purpose of these webinars is to provide a platform for members of the council to share resources and information, network, increase dialogue, and then provide support and resources for anyone with an interest in dark skies, be that a community leader who wants to implement a lighting ordinance or a park that wants to be a certified dark sky park. We want this to be a platform that provides good resources and information, as well as creates those networks, because I think we're all in it together and we have many of the same goals and questions. So welcome. Just a reminder of Zoom etiquette, we are being recorded. This session will be made available later this week. If you have questions, there's a couple of ways to ask questions in Zoom. There is a questions feature. We encourage you to use that, or the chat feature. We will also be asking you questions, and we love audience engagement. So there will be some polls later on as well. So we want to test out the chat feature. So we have a question for everyone. We'd love for you to respond in the chat. The question is, what are you looking forward to this summer? For me, I am planning a bike packing trip. This will be my first bike packing experience. I'm not sure where I'm going yet. I'm still looking for equipment. Apparently you need lightweight equipment for this to work. Hopefully it goes well. It's merging a couple of things I love, backpacking and bikes. So if you have, as well as telling us what you're looking forward to, if you have suggestions for equipment, please let me know. So please let us know what you're looking forward to this summer. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Jake. Jake's going to talk a little bit more about this partnership that brought the Western Night Skies Council together, provide an outline for today, and then we'll turn it over to our main presenters.
Thanks, Aubrey. It does look like lots of people have some fun, exciting things going on this summer. I encourage you to keep putting them in their chat. It's a good way to practice using the chat feature. So just a little bit about the work that we do. As Aubrey mentioned, I work with the NAR Initiative, which stands for Gateway and Natural Amenity Region Initiative. And we partnered with the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative to really start to think about how we could make a difference at a regional scale. How do we bring groups and individuals together to operate at the scale at which dark skies can make a difference? And we were approached in our initiative about the idea of a larger council, and that really was the seed idea of the Western Night Skies Council. And the reason they approached us in the NAR initiative is we are operating at that regional scale. We're a regional hub for researchers, for education, as well as outreach regarding the challenges that gateway communities specifically face. And we are located within Utah State University's Institute of Outdoor Recreation and Tourism. And what we try to do is work with organizations like the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative, or the Basin and Range Dark Sky Cooperative, that are trying to push forward and move the needle on dark sky enhancement and preservation. And we're excited to support groups like the Colorado Plateau and the Basin and Range Dark Sky Cooperatives through IORT, through the Institute of Outdoor Recreation and Tourism. And we're excited to be able to host webinars like the one we have today. So if you want to learn more about the NAR initiative, you can go to nar.usu.edu. And if you want to learn more about the Dark Sky Cooperatives, Liz will be posting their websites in there as well. So some things we're going to cover today. First, we want to give you an overview and a welcome to the IES, as well as educate you about what they do and how it affects the work you might be doing in your own individual communities or regions. We also wanted to use this as an opportunity to gather interest and talent that will help the work of the IES in their efforts to operate at a scale that's really much bigger than the work that we might be doing in our individual communities. So with that, I want to turn the time over to Alex and Eric to introduce themselves. We appreciate them spending some time with us today. Alex is the Manager of Government Affairs and Public Policy at IES, and Eric is the IES President for the Salt Lake section. So I'll let them introduce themselves and then move on with their presentation. Alex and Eric, we appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you, Jake. Good morning, everybody. Alex Baker from the IES. I'm not out west. I'm outside of Albany, New York, and I work for IES. I'm on staff there. My career is about 20 years in the lighting industry, and what I like to spend my time doing most of all when I'm not working is really just being outdoors and looking at stars as part of that. So I'm personally invested in this cause, and looking forward to this webinar, and hopefully it's helpful to you, and I hope we can answer any questions that you might have. Eric?
Thanks, Alex. And I know a lot of you have met me already. I've done a few introductions on our webinar series, but my name is, if you haven't met me yet, I'm Eric Yamashiro. I'm an electrical engineer and senior lighting designer for Michael Baker International here in Salt Lake City, Utah. But more importantly, I am the section president for the Salt Lake City section of the IES. I've been in the industry for the lighting industry for about 11 years now, but IES, I've been a part of that for about 8 years of that time. And yeah, we're gonna let Alex take it away. I don't wanna spoil what he's gonna be getting into.
All right, thanks, Eric. So let's get started. We're gonna first start with a poll to see what do you know about the IES? And Liz, perhaps you can throw that up on screen for us. Background for this is I've been working on more and more outdoor lighting issues with IES since I started in October 2017. And come to understand that a lot of people understand who IES is, and a lot of people don't quite understand what we're all about. So I'm pretty interested to get to know attendees and what you think you know about the IES. I can't seem to respond to the poll, but I probably don't need to. Liz, I guess you close it when we're ready. Okay. All right, great. So you've heard of us. That's terrific. Don't know much about them. I hope that we can solve that today. I certainly hope that we can address some of the concerns about us being troublemakers. That's one of the main reasons that I personally wanted to hold this webinar. So I hope this is helpful. And at the very end of this, you'll have our contact info, and I'm going to encourage you to reach out to Eric and I whenever you have questions that come up. Okay, so without further ado, this is about the IES. We were founded in 1906. The group, it's a technical society for lighting practitioners. It was founded by Thomas Edison and his peers. This photo I obtained from a friend at the Smithsonian. You can see Thomas Alva Edison and wife. Unfortunately, she didn't have her name assigned to the photo, which I think is kind of regrettable. But at any rate, if you zoom in here, you'll see that this is an image of the IES conferring membership on Thomas Edison himself. One of our main objectives, one of the main things that we exist for, is to develop standards. We are an accredited standards development organization under ANSI, American National Standards Institute approved procedures. We're a publisher of American National Standards. That includes methods of measurement for measuring lighting products that you purchase at the store, for instance, recommended practices, for instance, for laying out the lighting in your office, design guides, and technical memoranda that support all of the above. Some of our standards are incorporated by reference into federal energy regulations. So those products that are regulated are measured according to our methods of measurement. And some of our standards serve as de facto standards in the international space. We have approximately 8,400 members. And again, we're a technical society representing the interests of lighting practitioners specifically. So we count among our members architects, engineers, lighting designers. If you're so lucky you have an electrical engineer and lighting designer like Eric on your project, those folks are a big part of our society. Laboratory technicians who test lighting products, lighting educators and students, scientists, researchers, electric utilities are also involved, their personnel. And I throw the word personnel in here, especially when referring to manufacturers, because I want to emphasize here that we don't represent manufacturers. We don't represent manufacturing. We represent lighting practitioners, many of whom happen to work for lighting manufacturers, and then many others. We're incorporated as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Originally, we've always been headquartered in New York City. Our previous headquarters was up on 47th Street near the UN, but back in 1991, the owner of this building here at Silverstein Properties designated a portion, or maybe all, I'm not quite sure, I think it's all of the building to nonprofit organizations. And so our society seized upon that opportunity and moved our headquarters into this building. And so it's a little strange. Some people see that we're a nonprofit, but we're headquartered on Wall Street, which sounds a little bit disconnected, admittedly, but that's the reason that we are there. This building is designated essentially for nonprofits. We have a staff of 28 employees, seven of whom are remote, myself included. And one thing that I think is kind of interesting is if you look at the original electrical grid for the Edison Electric Illuminating Company, if you look at a map of that, our building here, 120 Wall Street, is on the southeast corner of that original grid. So it's kind of, I think it's kind of cool that we're headquartered right where it all began in terms of electric illuminating engineering. Something I want to emphasize here is that IES is not a trade association. We don't represent commercial interests. We're not focused on profits. We're not focused on costs. When a project gets loaded up with lots more additional light fixtures and salesman is making lots of extra money from it, that's not a result of us. Again, we represent lighting practitioners. If you are looking for trade associations, those who represent the profit motives of lighting manufacturers, those would be the American Lighting Association, which tends to be more focused on residential lighting and the showrooms that support those products, and the National Electrical Manufacturers Association, or NEMA, who tends to mostly represents commercial lighting, that is the lighting that goes into your offices and your workspaces. NEMA is the other ANSI accredited standards development organization. They developed the standards for form, fit, and function. So for example, when you go buy a standard light bulb, which is an A19 in our world, that shape has been predefined decades ago, many decades ago, and the NEMA standard ensures that every bulb that's sold into the market that's called an A19 actually conforms to that shape and the limits of that shape. So they write the standards for product specific attributes. The mission of the Illuminating Engineering Society is to improve the lighted environment by bringing together those with lighting knowledge and translating that knowledge into actions that benefit the public. And our vision is to build upon a century of excellence to create the premier lighting community dedicated to promoting the art and science of quality lighting to its members, allied professional organizations, and the public. This is going to be a little bit of an eye chart, but I think it's important to read because I really want to convey what it is that we're trying to do. And a lot of that is captured in the belief statements of our society. We believe that light is vital to life. It's as important as air, water, and shelter. Light, and importantly, the absence of light, affect human vision, health, and behavior. Lighting should enhance comfort and aesthetics, important components of the built environment, both indoors and outdoors. Lighting designs should respond to human needs while minimizing negative environmental impacts. Lighting quality should be a priority at the onset of any design and should be maintained throughout the construction process. And sustained research is necessary to quantify lighting benefits that improve the quality of life. Lighting standards and policies should be based on the consensus of topic experts informed by scientifically validated data. There's not a lot of room in our society for folks who don't firmly believe in science. The IES believes that collaboration with other non-lighting organizations on lighting policies and regulations is essential for the benefit of the public interest. That's one of the reasons I'm here with you today. And it's one of the reasons that IES has become a member of the Western Night Skies Council. And it's one of the reasons that we're really grateful for having been invited to the table. Global collaboration and member participation are vital to the long-term viability of the lighting community. And there's only, sorry, this is the last one. I know it's a lot. Education is critical to maintaining a robust, dynamic lighting community and for continued professional growth. So those belief statements sort of craft how we work in the world, how we organize with other organizations, how we move initiatives forward. We always come back to these belief statements, to the vision statement and to the mission statement, and that helps to inform our actions. And there are times when we might be considering something and it might come up on staff as an idea, but then referring back to these statements, we say, that doesn't fit, so we're not going to do that. These really do guide us. This graphic, I won't go through all of it, but it's essentially sort of a graphical summary of what I just said. Lighting quality is achieved when human needs are met, when we also address economics and energy efficiency and environmental concerns related to lighting, and also, of course, when we address needs related to architectural or other building site-related issues. A little bit about ANSI standardization. American national standards are the pinnacle of the US standardization system, and it's an important system. Everything from the electrical outlet on your wall to the stop sign on the street, all of these things are standardized so that when you go from state to state and you plug devices in, they always connect correctly. When you go outside of North America and you travel, say, to the Middle East, you might see a red octagonal sign and you might not be able to read the words in it, but you know that it means stop. These standards are, of course, very important for so many different reasons. And so within the United States, ANSI standards are the pinnacle of the standardization system. If something comes along that may challenge the standard, there isn't going to be something that is issued that is viewed as better than the ANSI standard. Something comes along and it needs to be addressed, it'll be addressed in the ANSI standard. And it's ANSI standards that get adopted by governments, both federal, state, and sometimes local. The American National Standards Institute, ANSI, is the administrator and coordinator of the US private sector voluntary standardization system. They were founded in 1918. They're a private, nonprofit member organization, and IES is one of those organizations. We're an ANSI accredited standards developing organization. American national standards can serve as the basis for international standards development. So very often standards will come out of the US and serve as the basis for IEC standards, ISO standards, or ITU standards. I'm going to share a bit about this, about the standards development process, because I'd like you to understand it and I'd like you to consider getting involved with it. Our standards are developed according to ANSI essential requirements, which are in effect for creating due process requirements. We want to make sure that there is a transparent process for developing these standards, that all stakeholders who have an interest are able to step forward, explain their concerns, and have them addressed as part of the process. So the beginning of the process is entering a project initiation notification to ANSI, which tells them, hey, we're putting up our hand and we as an SDO are saying, we're going to develop a standard for this thing. That gives other ANSI standards development organizations an opportunity to say, well, wait a second, we've been thinking about the same thing. That doesn't happen very often because it tends to be that the SDOs have very specific narrow foci, and that's of course the case for IES as well. The second step is developing a working group, and this is really critical. We're required by ANSI essential requirements to maintain a balance of producers, that is manufacturers, specifiers, affected users, public interest, academia, government folks. I'm sorry to be reading off of the slide. You can see it all here yourself. But the point is, we're not allowed to develop a standard where the working group is overloaded with manufacturers. For instance, if you have a working group that has 60% manufacturers and everyone else here listed are just minor figures, well, it's kind of predictable what kind of standard you're going to end up with. You're going to end up with one that's heavily weighted toward the interests of manufacturers. And so, that's why we need to maintain a balance of interest within the working group. The third step is that the working group develops the standard. That can take months or years, depending on the topic at hand. The draft standard is then balloted within the committee. That can take weeks or months. The next step is unique to the ANSI process. There are other standards developed out there that aren't ANSI standards. But as soon as they become American national standards, they have to go through something called the ANSI public review process, which means that any standard we develop, we put out on the street. I think it's a 45-day period that the general public, even just curious citizens, can go and obtain a copy of the standard and enter comments and enter their concerns. And there will be a process in place for addressing them. They may not have every concern addressed to their satisfaction, but the working group will have to speak to the comment entered and explain why they're either going to adopt the comment, make a change based on the comment, or why they reject the comment. But there is a process there that has to be maintained for responding to anyone's concerns. The standard is then reviewed and approved by the IES Standards Committee. This committee exists for the sole purpose of making sure that our standards have followed the ANSI essential requirements. They have no other charge. That is their task. As soon as the standard comes out of ANSI public review and any comments that have come in have been addressed, it's then kicked over to the Standards Committee and they assess whether ANSI essential requirements and the due process requirements have been met. Finally, the standard is sent to typesetting and is published. That's usually a matter of weeks. Occasionally, the standard is then incorporated by reference into federal regulations or normatively referenced into specifications such as Energy Star products. They have specifications. That's a place where IES standards can be referenced. And then hopefully if we're lucky and we've been successful and we've worked really hard, the world is a better place for our efforts. That's our hope. So I'm going to walk you through some of the technical committees within the IES. And again, the reason I'm doing this is that we are always looking for new talent and new interested parties who want to step forward and be part of these processes. We have about 40 technical committees, and they're housed under 3 advisory panels. The first one, under the Science Advisory Panel, includes these committees. And in the following slides, the ones where you see an arrow and then the language is italicized, those are committees that we are going to be combining into one outdoor committee, because so many of the interests of these individual committees are so closely aligned that it's no longer sustainable to keep them in separate silos. We need to bring those conversations together. So within the Science Advisory Panel, we've got these committees, and that includes DGON is the short name we have for Discomfort, Glare, and Outdoor Nighttime Environments Committee, and then also the SkyGlow Committee. Next is Practice Advisory Panel. These are all the committees within that, everything from building information modeling to daylighting, economics. Internet of Things Committee is one of the new ones because lighting is becoming more and more a connected entity on the internet. Lighting and Controls, Commissioning, and then Outdoor Environmental Lighting Committee. That's one of the committees that will be merged together. Applications Advisory Panel, that includes everything from applications like airports and heliport lighting to healthcare and horticulture, landscape lighting, and lighting for exterior applications. Those are 2 that will be merged. Those are 5 total that will be merged into one committee. Port terminal lighting, who knew? Those folks have really specific lighting needs that need to be addressed. And if they're not, it can create safety issues for dock workers. Security lighting, sports and recreational areas lighting committee. So we cover it all. Lighting measurement and testing, and roadway and parking facility lighting. Those are also some of our technical committees. So this is going to shift gears for a second, but you'll see in a moment the direction I'm going here. We're just going to pause for a second. I'm just going to pose the question, how many of the lights in your home are now LED? So 10 years ago, probably none of them, or maybe 1. But at this point, a lot of us, our whole households have changed over to LED. I can think of only 2 lights in my house that remain incandescent. I haven't been able to find the right size bulb to put into them. So speaking for myself, I would say 80 to 100% of the lights in my house are LED, but I'm sort of unusual in that respect, I suppose. So let me know, how many of the lights in your home are now LED? Liz, why don't we close that and see what we got? I'm very, very curious about this. This is a very progressive bunch. That's really great to hear. It sounds like many of you are in much the same boat as I am, that you have a few incandescent bulbs left over, but you just can't find the right LED bulb to replace it. So that's really great. Thank you. Here's the reason I was going for that is, after having summarized all that committee work, I wanted to give you an example of one thing that comes out of one of our committees. Before I joined IES staff in 2017, I was involved in the Testing Procedures Committee for about 10 years. I say before because we have a policy internally that staff members keep an arm's length from committee work. It's important that those committees are enabled to do their work without influence of staff. On the right-hand side of your screen here is ANSI IES LM79-19. The way you read this is ANSI denotes that it's an American national standard. LM IES, of course, denotes that we're the publisher of it. LM denotes that it is a lighting measurement standard. 79 indicates that it's the 79th one numerically in the series. And then the last 2 digits always denote the year that it was published. So this was published in 2019. I would say probably every LED product that you all have installed in your homes has been tested according to this standard. And when you looked on the box and it told you how much power it used, what the color temperature was, how much light output, of course, that it gives, all of those were determined in all likelihood according to this American national standard that's published by the IES. Our committees are very responsive to the moment. And so in light of, sorry for the pun, in light of the pandemic, our Testing Procedures Committee, a working group within that committee right now, is working on these methods of measurement for characterizing low pressure mercury sources, the ultraviolet output of low pressure mercury. Same for UV LEDs, excimer sources, discharge sources, and also an improved method for characterizing UVC products. So those would be completed luminaires or completed products of some type. Luminaires is the word for light fixture, excuse me. And then finally, a standard for calibration and characterization of UVC detectors. On the side here, I've got the chat. Somebody asked me if we're connected with NIST. The head of the optical radiation laboratory at NIST is one of the most heavily involved individuals within this committee. And he personally, that's Cameron Miller at NIST, he personally is heading up the working group that's doing the UV work. And for those who are not familiar, ultraviolet emissions can be used for disinfection, for eliminating pathogens like viruses, bacteria, fungus and such. Another example of responding to the moment is the IES Photobiology Committee. They publish the RP27 series, which has been consolidated into one document. Once published, it'll be ANSI IES RP27-21, 22, it depends on when it comes out. But on screen here, these are two documents that they're working on publishing. The BSR on the front end denotes that it has not yet cleared the Board of Standards review at ANSI. And so I'm not even allowed to type ANSI/RP27.1. There are rules against that. So until it clears that board, it is BSR/IES, and that indicates that it's in ANSI public review right now. All of this comes together to form what we call the Lighting Library, which is an online resource available to everyone. It's not free, of course, but the entire Lighting Library can be accessed by subscription, or for those who only need a portion of it, say you only work on roadway lighting, you're an engineering firm that does that, you don't do anything else, then you might only buy that one. You might be a laboratory, in which case you might only have use for the lighting measurement series, and you don't need the rest of the series, the rest of the library. So that's everything, and it's all at ies.org, which I'd encourage you to visit if you have the time and interest. And here's my pitch. Please join an IES technical committee. Our committees thrive on the diverse expertise of our volunteers. These standards, like I said, are developed in accordance with IES policies and procedures. In the interest of transparency, those are published also at ies.org. Excuse me. As I was explaining, we are charged with balancing the interests of committee participants, and that can include folks who are not in the lighting industry but are affected by lighting products. And so this is why I'm appealing to attendees here to please consider being a part of IES technical committees. We need a diversity of interests at the table. IES membership is never a prerequisite to technical committee participation. So if you want to become an IES member, we'd love to have you. But if you don't want to shell out the money to be a member, that's okay too. You can still be part of the conversation in any of these technical committees. And I'm happy to point you to where to apply to join those committees. So I'll stop here and just ask another poll question. Would you be interested in joining an IES technical committee? Understanding your personal interests, your expertise, your vision for dark skies in the future. They're clearly not dark enough anywhere, really. Would you be interested in joining? Do you have expertise that you'd like to lend? So I'm curious about that. Eric and I will have our contact info at the end, so we'll encourage you to contact us anytime if you have a question, if you're curious about whether you think you might be a good fit, but you're not sure. Hit us up. We'd like to talk with you about that. So Liz, why don't we close that? And I'm going to cross my fingers that there's some interest in joining some of our committees. Okay, cool. That's kind of what I figured. I've thrown a lot at you here. So understandable if you're not sure which one, but I'm encouraged. That's really great. So we'll close that. Thank you, Liz. So one of the things we're particularly excited about is our collaboration with the International Dark Sky Association. In 2019, we signed an MOU with them, a strategic collaboration to address the global issue of light pollution that negatively affects our environment and the human condition. We've enjoyed working closely with Ruskin Hartley, John Barentine and Pete Strasser at IDA. And one of the first products that came out of this collaboration is the 5 principles for responsible outdoor lighting. I'll talk about that on the next slide. Other projects are the IDA IES model lighting ordinance and developing a new color metric for outdoor lighting and educating municipalities and individuals. Excuse me. The 5 principles for responsible outdoor lighting is a guiding document that our 2 organizations came up with. And you may be familiar with this already. You can find it on the IDA website or on the IES website. These 5 principles are intended to guide decision-making when it comes to installing new lighting, designing new lighting for installation. First, lighting should be useful. It should have a clear purpose. If you can't articulate why the light is there, then it probably shouldn't be there to begin with. It should be dark. It should be targeted and directed only to where it's needed. And we should take care to not shed light onto areas where it's not needed. Low light levels are in order. We don't need to be blasting outdoor spaces with more light than is necessary. Temporally speaking, it should be controlled. So if the light doesn't need to be on at a certain time, turn it off or have an automatic control that will turn it off. And then finally, color. We know that due to Rayleigh scattering, there are certain colors and certain short wavelength content, especially that can create more light pollution. And so warmer color temperatures, warmer color lights are important to use. On that, one thing that we all want, or at least IDA and IES are looking toward, is developing a new color metric for outdoor lighting. This is sort of my wanted poster, I suppose. CCT is a defined term. It's an American National Standard term. And for those who are curious about other lighting standardized terms, if you go to IES.org and you click on the standards tab up here, it'll take you to the IES LS1 standard, which includes all nomenclature and terminology, all the American National Standard nomenclature and terminology. And that's a free resource. You can go to it anytime. CCT was developed to characterize the color appearance of fluorescent lamps. When it was developed, it was not envisioned to be used for any other purpose except characterizing what the lamps look like with respect to each other. CCT is non-monotonic with respect to blue light content. That is to say that some of these lower CCTs will actually have more blue light content than higher CCTs. There are 2700 Kelvin sources that have more blue light content than 3000 Kelvin sources. There are 3000 K sources that have more blue light content than 4000 K sources. And so we recognize that CCT is a convenient metric, and it's a metric that's already used by the lighting industry. And so it's convenient in that respect. But a better metric is needed. And IES and IDA intend to work together toward identifying a better way to characterize light pollution potential with input from a wide variety of interested parties. And that takes me to the other collaboration, one of the other collaborations that we're really excited about is a project agreement that we signed with the National Park Service in 2020. We've been working closely with Karen Trevino, Jeremy White, and team within the Natural Sounds and Night Skies division of National Park Service. It's been terrific working with them. And we're excited also to have the Park Facility Management Division involved, because those are the folks who are really doing the work out in the field. They're going to be the ones taking out old light fixtures, putting in new ones. They replace light bulbs for the older technologies. And so it's important to have the park facility folks involved in the discussion as well. And the project agreement is to advance the knowledge and improve effectiveness of outdoor lighting in national parks and other protected areas, and to eliminate or reduce impacts to park natural, cultural, and historic resources and visitor enjoyment from outdoor lighting. It's also to collaborate on the development of IES outdoor lighting standards that address the needs of national parks and are specific enough to be useful, but also flexible enough to meet the numerous lighting needs of national parks, of National Park Service, and their needs are vast. I mean, if you consider the amount of land and the number of miles of roadway to access that land that the National Park Service maintains, it's a huge undertaking. This is just a few examples. It's not comprehensive of some of the needs, the lighting needs in national parks. They of course have visitor centers and restrooms and bridges and tunnels and campgrounds and roads. But have you also considered that they have landing strips? They have sports fields, marinas, amphitheaters. All of these things need lighting, but they're also concerned with making sure that wilderness is preserved. This is examples of some of the National Park Service outdoor lighting concerns. Wildlife is a huge concern for them, diurnal and nocturnal. Impacts to cultural resources and values. Visitor enjoyment, of course, is a big concern. Sustainability, won't read all of this. Historic authenticity. The National Park Service is charged with maintaining the land that the Statue of Liberty sits on. They're responsible for those facilities. The White House, there are so many other facilities that are not national parks, but they're national monuments and such that NPS is responsible for. And so collaborating with them, we need to focus on these examples of the Park Service's outdoor lighting concerns. Technical committee work, working toward darker skies. I've got two things to report on. First is, and this just dawned on me less than an hour before the webinar today, the joint IDA-IES model lighting ordinance that I think many of you are familiar with was published 10 years ago today, June 15th, 2011. This was published after a multi-year development process, and we formed a new working group with a balance of IDA and IES representatives, and their charge is to review the existing 2011 MLO, success stories related to the use of that MLO, and also barriers to adoption. This working group is then charged with developing recommendations to IDA and IES on what to do next. Should the document be abandoned and just go poof, it goes away? Should it be revised? Should it be renewed in its current form? We think it's most likely that revision is what's going to happen, but we're trying to break these things down into individual tasks. And the first one is to just simply pour through it and develop recommendations to IDA and to IES. The other committee work that I want to highlight is ANSI TM15 is a document that you may be familiar with. This is where the bug rating system comes from, backlight, uplight, and glare rating system. The same thing, we've formed a working group recently to provide recommendations to the IES for its presumed revision. It works in some instances, but there are a great many instances where the bug rating leaves something to be desired. And so this group is going to be working on developing recommendations for that. That's enough of me talking. I'd now like to pass it over to Eric for the next few slides.
All right, thanks, Alex. Real quick, before I dive into this slide, I wanted to just share real quick my experience with the technical committees. I actually volunteered to be on the Building Information Modeling Committee. Not a lot of relevance to everything we're talking about here, but as far as that topic for that committee, but it really is a great experience to be, at the forefront of trying to figure out these issues that we're having within the industry, and just getting everybody's opinion and having everyone come to the table and see everyone who sees things maybe a little different than you do as well. And just having it all in one room is a really powerful experience. So really highly recommend volunteering for that if you are interested. So, all right, so IES sections. As I said, I'm the president for the Salt Lake City section. And so I'm speaking more from my experience that I've put in as a volunteer for IES at the section level. We have members in 65 different countries, which we're very proud of, but the vast majority of our members are here in North America. There are, by my count, 143 different sections within North America, including up in Canada and down into Mexico. We have broken these into 4 regions, which are shown on the map here, and then that's broken down even further into 8 separate districts. And the sections are just made up of volunteers. Sorry, the section boards are made up of volunteers. So we call it a labor of love because really we're not getting paid to do anything here. We're here because we're passionate about spreading about creating these educational programs, presentations, and events that highlight the current standards and trends that IES on a national level is producing. or supporting. And we're also trying to tailor events to our local area. For example, here in Salt Lake, our events are going to be a little bit different than what you're getting on the East Coast. They kind of just have different priorities over there, which is fine. But what's great with the with COVID and doing all these remotely, we've been able to kind of attend events everyone have been able to attend before on each side of the country. And then we also do a lot of presentations and events that are geared towards professional development, networking, leadership opportunities. And our goal is to help build communities and encourage social interaction within the lighting community. And whether that's just the members, with each other, or with our partner associations like IDA or AIA that might be in the area, we do a lot of work between those. And real quick, before we change slides here, the map that you see on the screen, this is actually on the IES.org website. If you go to the tab About IES, and then there's a selection there called Find a Section, that'll bring up this map, and it's interactive. And if you click on one of the pins, or if you hover over the pin, it'll tell you the name of the section. And if you click on it, because it's near you, it'll take you directly to that section's website if they have one. So if you're interested in connecting to your local section, just go. I would recommend going there first, seeing if they can have some contact information for you there. If not, feel free to reach out to myself or Alex, and we'll find a way to get you in contact with who you want to be in contact with. So go ahead and go to the next slide. And so to give you an idea of some of our events and what we do, these two pictures on the side here are actually from the Salt Lake section. The top one is one of our more social events. It's actually a luminaire design competition that we do. It's all from craft materials, and it's a lot of fun. But the one down below is kind of our typical, what we do a lot more and what we think is the more important thing to do, and that is to provide education and continuing education for our members and for the community at large. And if on the left here, I just have a few examples of some other, of some of these events these all happened within the last 2 years. IES New Jersey put on Starting for Darkness. It's presented by Jane Slade, and it was a look at how photosensitive animals and plants are affected by stray light, and how we can design around these concerns and some code changes that are much needed in that area. And I know that New Jersey wasn't the only one to put on this presentation. I believe it also went on in New Mexico as well at the Albuquerque section. In Ontario, there is a lighting for outside pedestrian spaces. I think I saw a question that's been entered here about, and this was a look at the recommended practices that were recommended practice number 43 and LP2, both documents by the IES, and which address the light levels and design recommendations for parks, civic squares, waterways, plazas, restaurants, sports fields, anything that isn't public right-of-way space. I've gone through this recommended practice myself, and it's I think it's a very important document for lighting designers, but also if you are concerned about those spaces and you want to see what those recommended practices are by the IES right now, that's a fairly new document. And this one has also been put on by more than just Ontario. It's been a very popular topic around. Turning back to Salt Lake City, we actually had this presentation right at the onset of COVID, but we did a beautiful night in the neighborhood with our very own Aubrey Larson, John Barentine, and Sophie Bellina. And this was a great presentation looking at efforts here locally to approach local jurisdictions about dark sky awareness. I think we talked a lot about what was going on down in Moab and those other dark sky areas that we're very proud of. And the other outreach that IDA is doing in the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative. And that was a very great presentation that was very well attended. And then IES Los Angeles, they did Dark Sky Post-LED Revolution. This was done by Andy Powell from the Lighting Design Alliance. And he talked a lot in this one about California-specific effects that he's seen from LED retrofits to streetlights. And also talked about what has, or more importantly, what hasn't been done yet in California for dark sky ordinances and how those need to be updated. Beyond these are all past events. currently, IES Salt Lake is looking to partner with IES Hawaii and IES Denver to bring some more dark sky content. IES Hawaii has some interesting dark sky area there that they are very excited to tell us about. And then IES Albuquerque, Albuquerque and IES Phoenix, I know that they work very closely with their dark sky partners there, and they're always looking for more content. So I've been reaching out to them a lot to try to prepare for this presentation, and I've heard some really great things coming from them as well. And Alex kind of made the pitch about not having to be a member to get involved. I want to say that here at the section level as well. All of our events are open to anybody who wants to attend them. Some of them do have, we charge at most about $20 for just our typical lunch and learns that we do in person. We actually waived that for during COVID. A lot of our presentations for free, or at most $5. And usually that is just going to covering our base for those events. And that's usually charged to members and non-members. So really, we're not telling you have to be a member to get involved. We really just want you to come and be a part of the conversation. We want to hear from all sides. Everybody has a stake in this. So, and next slide. So we got another question for you guys, and this is more of an open-ended one. If you could put it into the chat, what lighting-related topic do you want to learn about? And this is very important for me on the section level. And we are always looking for new content. We want to know what you guys want to hear about, whether it's more about dark sky, or maybe you want to know more about specific metrics within lighting products. So I'll give you a minute to put that in there. Future of warm LEDs from Noah. New violet pump LEDs from Steven. All right, dark sky compatible lighting. All right, these are all very good questions. Quantify sky brightness. And Bob, that's an interesting one. I'll speak to that a little bit right now. Quantifying sky brightness is a topic that's been, there's a lot of people who have a different opinion on how that should be done. I know that just off to the side, University of Utah is looking into this a little bit with their dark sky program. Valachi Ganesan there has been, we've had some side conversations about this, and I know that she's looking for that metric as well. So we can look into that for you and hopefully bring some content to that. Great. These are all great. All right. And let's go to this next topic, or the next slide. One more question. And how can you see yourself or your organization using the IES resources or collaborating with IES in the future? Whether that's with us in IES Salt Lake City, or if it's another section, or even on the national level, if you aren't already working with IES and you feel like your organization has something to bring, we want to hear about it.
Well, I'm encouraged how much interest there is here. I mean, it sounds like if the council is interested, we could schedule other webinars in the future to maybe talk about some of the topics that have come up here. For instance, I'd be happy to reach out to some of the chairs and executive committees of of these committees to see if they could come in and give a presentation. For instance, someone was asking here about how are illuminance standards determined, say, for roadways. The roadway committee is one of our largest and most active committees within the IES, and it's arguably one of the most important as well, because they're charged with developing standards that that are intended to keep pedestrians safe, to keep motorists safe. And so that's a very good question to ask. How are these standards determined? How are the illuminance standards determined? A lot of these questions would make great webinars in and of themselves. Major light polluter, car headlights, I couldn't agree with you more. Unfortunately, I have to say that's not in our purview. That's a Society of Automotive Engineering, SAE. I agree with you completely, Dr. Grossman. However, that's it's just not something that we touch. So maybe we should just move on to open questions. Or Eric, if you see any within the list that you want to address.
Yeah, Alex and Eric, I'll aggregate a few of these. A few of the original or earliest questions were talking about kind of committee organization. So I'm curious, is there a committee that handles lighting in public parks and similar areas that are not necessarily sport areas? Was one of the questions, as well as, is there a committee that looks at oil and gas industry lighting? So maybe Alex, that's a question for you of maybe these folks are interested in a committee they could look to. That's
a really interesting one about the oil and gas industry lighting. I'm not sure we have a committee for that. But if I picture in my mind what an oil refinery looks like, it's usually pretty bright. So if Eric, can you think of a committee that's related to that? I don't think we have one, but if not, it's a topic worth exploring.
I mean, I think it falls under one of the applications committees, but it's more broadly addressed to industrial lighting. And because we do have recommendations based on, I mean, we do have some recommendations for oil and all that, but I don't think that there's an active committee updating those standards. And so, and I know it's interesting, especially if you get into like mining or something like that, there's a lot of portable lighting that goes along with that. And that's, you know, something that they're not always bringing on a lighting specialist to do. They're just like, oh, we need a light there. Let's roll in a generator powered light and just put it there for a while. But for oil and gas, where it's a little, you know, it is a little bit more set. Yeah, I don't think there's a set committee just for that specific application.
Wonderful, thank you. One of the questions that I think many people are asking is these standards seem really important and applicable, but they're often difficult to find or published in documents that are expensive to obtain. Are there ways that members of our group could obtain some of these, are ways they could be made more accessible?
Well, it's a tough problem that we face as a standards developing organization, and you can go ask any SDO the same thing. We're a publisher, and so in order to cover the costs of publishing, we have to charge for the standards. At the same time, we have an interest in making sure that the information that's contained in those standards is available and accessible to people. So it's a balance. Of all the things that I covered here, I showed you some individual standards like LM79. If one wants to purchase just LM79, that's available. There's also then the whole lighting measurement library, that's available. And then there's the entire lighting library. Personally, I wouldn't shell out the money for the entire lighting library, but I might be interested in just the measurement standard section or that individual standard. There are instances where IES standards are incorporated by reference into federal regulations, and those are made publicly available by way of the ANSI website. There's a way to access those, and if anyone needs access to those, you can email me, and I'm happy to point you. There is an ongoing problem, however, that the Code of Federal Regulations references IES standards from decades ago that have been updated multiple times since that version was published. And so if a standard is referenced in there from 1994, that standard is deprecated. We don't sell it anymore, and yet it continues to be referenced there. But so for those instances, there is a way to access the standard online for free. And if anybody's interested in that, just contact me.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. There's a couple of really great questions that are unanswered that our team will look to send to Alex and Eric, and maybe in a follow-up email to those who attended, we can answer some of those questions in a little more detail. But I do want to thank Alex and Eric for being here today, for Aubrey and Liz working so hard to put great people in front of us with amazing resources. So thank you. Huge special thank you to Aubrey and Liz. If you want to know a little bit more about the IES, I'll have Liz paste their website into the chat. And then as well, we do have some information, some resources. We have it in what's called a link tree, which is a document that allow you to link to a bunch of different information, some of which is germane to the information we covered today. And finally, if you want to know, kind of be the first to know a little bit about the NAR initiative and the Western Night Skies Council, we invite you to join our email list, and you'll be the first to know about future events, both for the NAR initiative and Gateway community specifically, as well as the Western Night Skies Council. So thank you very much for your time, Alex and Eric, and on our audience. And hopefully this has been a deep dive into IES and all things related to their work. And Alex and Eric, thank you for all your efforts to standardize and make things better in our world. I think it's working. So thank you everybody for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.